Hey everyone, I'm Natalie Chen. I'll never forget the day I found out I was pregnant. I was alone in the bathroom, staring at that little stick, and my heart was racing. When those two pink lines appeared, I just couldn't believe it. I mean, I've always been so focused on my career as a graphic designer. But this was a whole new adventure. The first person I wanted to tell was my husband, Daniel. He was in the garage, totally absorbed in his latest art project. I burst in, waving the test like a crazy person. "Danny," I shouted. He looked up, saw the test, and his eyes went wide. Before I knew it, we were both laughing and crying and hugging in the middle of his tools and paintbrushes. We were going to be parents. We decided to tell our friends at Friday, our weekly game night. So, my best friend since college shrieked so loud I thought the neighbors would call the cops. "I'm going to be an aunt," she shouted, practically crushing me in a hug. Marcus, my work buddy, just grinned. "Congrats, Nat. That kid's going to have the coolest nursery in town." It felt like everything was falling into place. Daniel and I spent evenings planning the nursery, picking out baby names, and daydreaming about our future as a family. But then, life threw us a curveball. On a regular Tuesday, Daniel got a call that his dad, Richard, had a minor heart attack. Daniel looked shaken. "He's okay," he assured me, "but the doctor said he shouldn't be alone for a while." I didn't hesitate. "He can stay with us," I said. "I mean, he's family, right?" Richard moved in a week later. At first, it was nice. He helped around the house and even took over some of the cooking. But then the little comments started. "Should you be eating that?" he'd ask, looking suspiciously at my plate. Or, "Are you sure you should be working so late?" At first, I brushed it off. He was just worried, I told myself. Then one evening, as I was heading out to meet a client, Richard stopped me. He began, "When my wife was pregnant, she focused on taking care of herself and the baby." I felt like I'd been slapped. "I am taking care of myself," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Daniel quickly jumped in, trying to calm things down. "Then Nat's doing great. The doctor says everything is fine." But Richard just shook his head. "Times have changed, I suppose," he muttered. After that, the tension in the house was constant. I'd catch Richard watching me with this look of disapproval whenever I worked late or snacked. His sighs and muttered comments became the backdrop to my days. One afternoon, I overheard him talking to Daniel in the kitchen. "Son, I'm worried about Natalie. Is she really ready for this? A baby is a big responsibility." I felt a pang of doubt. Was he right? Was I doing something wrong? That night, I called Zoe in tears. "Am I being oversensitive?" I asked. "Hell no," she said firmly. "He's being a jerk. You're growing a human, Nat. You're amazing." Her words helped, but the damage was done. The home that was once our sanctuary had become a minefield. And it only got worse. As my belly grew, so did Richard's comments. One morning, as I rushed to get ready for work, he cornered me in the kitchen. When my wife was pregnant, she took time off work to prepare for the baby. I took a deep breath. "Well, Richard, times have changed," I said. "I love my job and I'm perfectly capable of working and being pregnant." He scoffed. "And what about after the baby comes? You'll be a burden on Daniel, mark my words." His words cut deep, but I refused to let him see how much they hurt. I grabbed my bag and called over my shoulder, "Daniel and I are a team. We'll manage just fine." At work, I threw myself into a big project. Marcus, always perceptive, pulled me aside. "Hey, Nat, you seem stressed. Everything okay?" I hesitated. Then it all came pouring out. "It's Richard. He keeps saying I'm not ready to be a mom, that I'm a burden on Daniel. I don't know what to do." Marcus's face darkened. "That's not okay, Nat. Have you talked to Daniel about this?" I shook my head. "I don't want to put him in the middle. It's his dad, you know." Marcus looked at me seriously. "Yeah, but you're his wife and you're carrying his child. He needs to know what's going on." I nodded, realizing Marcus was right. That evening, I decided to talk to Daniel. Richard always seemed to hover close, making it nearly impossible to find a moment alone with Daniel. Finally, on Saturday afternoon, I got my chance. Daniel and I were relaxing in the living room when Richard stormed in, waving the dust cloth. "Natalie, when was the last time you cleaned? This place is a pigsty." I felt my cheeks flush with anger. "I've been busy with work, Richard, and I haven't been feeling great," I said, my voice tense. He snorted, crossing his arms. "Oh please, you're always not feeling great. I'm starting to think you're faking these symptoms just to get out of housework." That was it. I couldn't hold back anymore. "Faking? Are you kidding me? I'm growing a human, Richard. I'm tired, I'm nauseous, and I'm doing my best to keep up with everything. What's your excuse for being so unpleasant? Richard's face turned red with anger. How dare you speak to me like that? Daniel, are you going to let her talk to me this way? I turned to Daniel, bracing for him to try and placate his father as usual. But to my surprise, he held his ground, his jaw set and eyes unwavering. Dad, that's enough. Natalie isn't faking anything. She's pregnant, and she's working hard. You need to back off. Richard sputtered, clearly taken aback. I'm just trying to help, son. You'll see, she's not cut out for this. She's going to drag you down. I felt tears stinging my eyes, and Daniel stepped protectively between us, his voice firm. Dad, I think you should go to your room. We'll talk about this later. Richard stormed off, fuming, and as soon as he was gone, Daniel pulled me into a hug. I'm so sorry, Nat. I had no idea it was this bad. Why didn't you tell me? I buried my face in his chest, letting the tears finally fall. I didn't want to cause problems between you and your dad. I thought I could handle it. He stroked my hair gently. You don't have to handle this alone. We're in this together, remember? In his arms, I felt a small weight lift off my shoulders as if things might finally be okay. But a nagging thought tugged at me, wondering how long this peace would really last, and what it would take to end Richard's toxic behavior for good. The next morning, I woke up to raised voices coming from the kitchen. I crept down the stairs, staying out of sight as I listened to Daniel confronting his father. Dad, we need to talk about how you've been treating Natalie, Daniel said, his voice steady. Treating her? I'm looking out for you, son, Richard snapped. By insulting my wife? By making her feel unwelcome in our home. There was a pause, and then Richard's voice dropped to a cold mutter. That woman has ruined everything. You were supposed to take over the family business, not waste your time on art. My breath caught. Was this what all the bitterness was about? Natalie didn't make that decision, Dad. I did. I never wanted to join the business, and you know it. She filled your head with nonsense about following your passion. Richard scoffed. Because she supports me, unlike you, who's only ever cared about what you want. The argument continued, but I'd heard enough. I slipped back upstairs, my mind spinning. Later that day, I met Zoe for coffee, needing someone to talk to. I started to tell her what I'd overheard, but her expression stopped me cold. What's wrong? I asked. She hesitated. Nat, there's something you should know. Richard's been talking about you. A chill settled over me. What do you mean? Zoe looked at me apologetically. He's been telling people that you're unstable, that you're not fit to be a mother. He even suggested that you might hurt the baby. I felt like I'd been punched. He? What? I'm so sorry, Nat. I shut him down as soon as I heard, but I pulled away, my shock morphing into fury. This ends now. On the way home, I called Marcus, my voice shaking with anger. I need your help, I said, explaining everything. Jesus, Nat, that's messed up. What do you need? You've got connections in the business world, right? I need you to dig into Richard's past. There's got to be a reason he's so bitter about Daniel not joining the family business. There was a pause on the other end. Are you sure about this? Absolutely. He's trying to destroy my reputation. I need to know what we're dealing with. Over the next week, Marcus and I worked together, piecing together Richard's hidden history. The truth we uncovered left us both stunned. Nat, you're not going to believe this, Marcus said one evening. Richard's company. It's built on fraud. He's been cooking the books for years, embezzling from investors. I felt a surge of vindication mixed with disgust. No wonder he wanted Daniel to take over. He needed someone he could control to keep his secrets. Armed with this information, I went to Daniel. His face turned pale as I laid everything out. I can't believe this, he murmured. I took his hand, squeezing it tightly. I'm sorry, Dan. I know this must be hard to hear. He set his jaw, determination sparking in his eyes. No, I'm sorry for not seeing it sooner, for not protecting you. But that ends now. That evening, Daniel and I stood side by side in the living room, facing Richard. My heart pounded, but with Daniel beside me, I felt strong. Dad, we need to talk, Daniel began, his voice steady. Richard looked up from his newspaper, irritation etched on his face. I stepped forward, placing a thick folder on the coffee table. We know about the fraud, Richard. The embezzlement, the cooked books, everything. His face went pale before quickly turning red with fury. You've been snooping into my business. How dare you? Daniel stepped in, his voice unyielding. No, Dad. How dare you? You've lied, cheated, and tried to manipulate me into continuing your illegal practices. Richard's face twisted with anger, but he tried to justify himself. It was for your future, for this family's legacy. I couldn't stay silent any longer. Family legacy. You've been tearing this family apart since you arrived. Daniel placed a hand on my shoulder, steadying me. Here's the deal, Dad. You have two choices. You leave our home today and get professional help, or we take this evidence to the authorities. Richard's face contorted, his eyes burning with resentment. Ungrateful brats, after everything they've done for you, for us. I scoffed. You mean like spreading lies about me, trying to convince everyone I'm an unfit mother? For a moment, he looked stunned. Then his expression hardened, full of bitterness. You ruined everything. You turned my own son against me, against his future. Daniel shook his head, disappointment heavy in his voice. No, Dad, you did that all on your own. Richard abruptly stood, knocking over his chair. Fine, you won't be gone. I'm gone. But mark my words, you'll regret this, both of you. He stormed upstairs, his footsteps echoing through the house. An hour later, he was gone, leaving behind a tense silence. The months that followed were hard but healing. Daniel started therapy, working through the years of manipulation and control. We focused on preparing for our baby, surrounding ourselves with supportive friends like Zoe and Marcus. Then, on a warm summer day, our daughter Lily was born, perfect and beautiful. As I held her with Daniel by my side, a wave of peace washed over me. She's amazing, Daniel whispered, gently stroking Lily's cheek. Later, Zoe and Marcus visited, bearing gifts and warm smiles. As we shared stories and admired the baby, Marcus's phone buzzed. You guys might want to see this, he said, showing us a news article. Richard had been arrested for tax evasion, the charges completely unrelated to what we'd uncovered. Daniel exhaled, a mix of relief and disbelief. I guess karma's real, after all. That night, as our friends left and we settled into our first quiet evening as a family of 3, I looked at Daniel. We made it. After all that, we can handle anything, right? He wrapped his arms around me and Lily, smiling. Absolutely, and we'll do it together, always. Looking down at our daughter, I felt a fierce determination. We fought hard to protect her future, a future built on love, support, and honesty. And for that, I'd go through it all again. If you were in my shoes, would you have exposed Richard's fraudulent business practices or kept quiet to maintain family peace? What would you have done differently? Share your thoughts in the comments below.